Diddy is a very disturbed man. Behind all the posing and barking is someone scared out of his mind. He doesn't walk, he paces. He flinches in silence. He stares off like there's something in the room the rest of us can't see. Whatever he's done, it's chasing him. Much was clear the night he opened up. He thought he was just talking, or the walls were solid, but someone close was listening, closer than he realized. And now, there's a tape. I didn't go looking for it, but it found me. And ever since I heard what was on it, I haven't slept the same. What do you think pushes a man like that to finally speak? Guilt or fear? Let me know in the comments. And keep watching, like, and subscribe, because the deeper this goes, the worse it gets. I never worked directly for Diddy, but I was close enough to feel the heat when things moved. That world was small, smaller than people think. Everybody either owed somebody or kept quiet because they'd seen too much. I played my role like everyone else. Nothing fancy, just reliable hands in the background, close enough to watch the patterns repeat. There were people in that circle who did more than just drive or protect. They were the ones who made things disappear, not in a movie kind of way, just quietly. No questions, no follow-up. You knew who to avoid, who not to ask about when they suddenly stopped showing up. If something ever got too close to the surface. A file, a name, a girl, they handled it. Sometimes with money, sometimes with something colder, but always with silence. One of those guys reached out to me recently. We hadn't spoken in years. Last I heard, he'd fallen off the grid, started living out of country off record. He never said why. I figured he'd seen too much. Maybe he had. He sent me something in the mail. No note, no explanation. Just a plain drive tucked inside a folded piece of cardboard, wrapped up like junk. The kind of thing you might toss without thinking. I didn't. I knew his hands too well. That package wasn't random. I let it sit for a couple of days. Wasn't sure I wanted to touch it. Honestly, I still don't know if I should have. But I played it, and right away I knew what I was hearing wasn't meant for me. The voice was unmistakable. Diddy, quieter than I've ever heard him. Not performing, not barking orders, just talking. Low, calm, like he thought the room was empty and time wasn't running. He was speaking to someone across from him, someone he trusted. There was familiarity in his tone. You could tell this wasn't their first conversation. But he wasn't rambling. He was careful, choosing words the way people do when they know their life depends on how they're remembered. What stuck with me wasn't the confession. He didn't come out and say anything outright. But the way he spoke about the people around him, like they were tools he used up and stored in a box, it made my skin go cold. He talked about leverage, about what he kept, files, footage, nights people forgot on purpose, not because he enjoyed the power, but because it was the only thing that made him untouchable. The only thing he believed still gave him a way out. I called the number that came with the package. Just rang, no voicemail. After a few days, it stopped ringing entirely. I checked in with someone who used to work with both of us. Told me he hadn't been seen in weeks. So now the tape's with me. I've played it 3 times. Can't bring myself to hear it again. There's something about the way Diddy talks in that room. Not like a man hiding, but like a man remembering exactly where all the bodies are buried. Whatever that recording was meant to do, it was meant to be kept quiet. It wasn't for lawyers. It wasn't for court. It was for control. And someone out there wanted it out. Maybe they trusted me to hold it, or maybe they just wanted to see what I'd do once I knew what was really on it. The recording begins with Diddy speaking in a low, measured voice. He's not rushing, not searching for the right words. He knows exactly what he's saying and who he's saying it to. He talks like a man who still believes he's protected, or at least believes he can remind the right people why he used to be. He starts mentioning events in passing, a party in Calabasas, a hotel in New York, someone's private estate off the coast. No details are said outright, but anyone who's seen how this world moves could read between every word. He's not just reminiscing, he's building something as he talks. You can feel it. The names, the locations, the tone, it's layered, deliberate. Then he says, you don't need to threaten anyone when you've got memory on your side. That's how it works. You let them bury themselves, all you do is keep a copy. He describes the rooms, how the cameras were set, how guests were invited but not warned, how some left confused and others left indebted. There's no ego in the way he says it, no excitement, just routine. Like, this is how powerful men protect themselves and how weaker men learn to behave. It doesn't sound like a man confessing. It sounds like one issuing a reminder. The way he breaks down the system, how footage was handled, how consent was never part of the equation. It's not just disturbing, it's surgical. He knew who would come back asking for favors. He knew which faces on those tapes would panic the moment he stopped answering his phone. The man he's speaking to doesn't say a word the entire time, which makes it worse somehow. There's no challenge in the room, no tension. Just Diddy laying out the map like someone planning a fire escape. It's cold, practiced, and far too clear to be anything but real. And then halfway through a sentence, he shifts. He says, "If they let me fall, I'll pull everything down with me." They know that. That's why they're scared. That's why this room is safe. That's when it hit me. He wasn't confessing, and he wasn't looking for sympathy. He was sending a message, not to the man across from him, but to whoever would end up hearing it next. This wasn't meant to disappear. It was meant to be found. By the time the recording ended, I wasn't thinking about what he had. I was thinking about who else had copies. And what might happen now that even one of them has slipped out of the vault. The deeper I sat with that recording, the more I realized this wasn't about secrets. Secrets rot. They're unstable. They slip. This, what Diddy built, was different. It wasn't just insurance. It was infrastructure. A vault full of fear shaped into control. He didn't just collect footage. He organized it, categorized it. There were mentions of names grouped by initials, references to folders marked with months and colors. At first, it seemed like a personal archive. But as he went on, it started sounding more like a system. Something other people had access to. Something living. He said, "They all came to me with something to lose, and I gave them a place to put it." That line hasn't left me. He wasn't just a collector. He was a vault keeper. They handed him their worst nights, not realizing they were giving him permission to own them. And once he held it, he didn't need lawyers or contracts. All he needed was the possibility that one day someone might press play. He described one particular incident, vague but unmistakable. A young actress too drunk to stand. A producer everyone knows but no one touches. A party in the hills where no one had phones, yet somehow everything was captured. He didn't say who sent it to him, only that it arrived before dawn, cleanly edited, with a warning not to delete. He laughed when he said that part, like I ever delete anything. That's when it clicked. The footage wasn't always gathered by him directly. It came from others, people who owed him, people he paid off, people who learned how the game worked and wanted in. Over time, this became more than just evidence. It became the currency. You didn't trade favors anymore. You traded immunity. And now, sitting in that cell, he's no longer at the top, but he still speaks like someone holding the master key. Because if what he said on that recording is true, then some of the most protected names in business, entertainment, even politics all passed through him at some point, and every one of them left fingerprints behind. There's a point in the tape where his voice shifts. Not quieter, not louder, just colder. "They act like I'm finished," he says, "but they know better. I held their sins in my hands, and I was gentle. Now they want to pretend they've forgotten. So maybe it's time I remind them what forgetting costs." It was never about revenge. It was about reminding people where the real power lies. Not in money, not in fame, but in memory. Proof. The kind that doesn't die when someone's reputation does. And there's more. He talks about a second vault, offline, stored somewhere nobody would expect. Not a house, not a bank. Something smaller, portable. Something, he says, even his closest team never touched. It's the way he talks about it. Half coded, half defiant. That makes it clear he still thinks it's safe. That if anything happens to him, the contents will move. He even hinted at who might hold the trigger. Not a friend, not family. Someone forgotten. Someone people stopped watching a long time ago. That part chilled me. Because I realized this wasn't just about Diddy anymore. This was a chain reaction waiting to happen. If one piece falls, the others won't survive the collapse. They'll scramble, point fingers, burn what they can. But the damage is already sitting in someone's pocket, waiting. And this leak, the one I received, it wasn't noise, it was a tremor. The first sign that the foundation's starting to crack. I haven't told anyone what I'm holding. Not fully. The people who might understand it, they already know. And the ones who don't, well, they're safer that way. Because once you hear what's on that recording, you stop thinking in terms of guilt and innocence. You start wondering how far people would go to make sure no one else ever hears it. And look, if you're still listening at this point, I need to ask you something. Do you think something like this should ever be made public? Or are there some tapes the world isn't ready to hear? Something had shifted, and I could feel it before anything showed up in headlines. There's a certain rhythm to the way people behave when they know something's coming. They start speaking slower, avoid eye contact, answer calls in fewer words than usual, then stop picking up at all. It doesn't happen all at once. But once it begins, it doesn't stop. One of the names that used to handle flight routing and talent logistics disappeared. Not from the city, off the grid. His number stopped working. Office wiped clean. His history with Diddy erased like it never existed. No emails, no mentions. That's not coincidence. That's what people do when something bigger's already in motion and the weight's starting to shift. Others followed. Quiet removals. People who used to stand too close now stepping away without making it obvious. They weren't defending him. They were protecting themselves. Not out of loyalty, out of calculation. A week earlier, those same people would have bent to help. Now, they're pretending they never shook his hand. That's how I knew something serious had landed, and it wasn't public yet. They were reacting to something underneath, not to headlines, to exposure. The silence changed. It stopped being defensive, it turned into distance. No more damage control, no spin, just erasure. The kind that happens when someone already knows the fall is coming and wants to make sure their name isn't caught in the rubble. It wasn't panic. Panic's messy. This was strategic, lawyers quietly stepping away, managers closing offices for renovation, whole departments shifting branding like they weren't tied to him just 6 months ago. I checked the drive again. Still there, untouched. I didn't hit play. I didn't need to. I just wanted to see it. Like it might look different now that the world around it was crumbling. That file didn't just hold his voice. It held pressure. And every second it existed, someone out there was trying to get ahead of it. The recording didn't just expose Diddy. It exposed how he operated. Not just one crime, a system layered, cold. And the people he trapped in that system weren't just scared of him anymore. They were scared of what was no longer under control. There were whispers about another drive, something separate, another set of recordings, maybe older. Word was someone outside the circle had it, not an assistant, not staff, someone who'd been pushed out long ago. And if that's real, then this whole thing isn't about silencing him, it's about bypassing him. Because Diddy always thought he was the vault, but if he's not the one holding the key anymore, then what's coming next isn't up to him. People aren't scrubbing connections because they're afraid of what he might say. They're doing it because they think someone else already has the footage, and they don't know what version that person's planning to release. Studios, sponsors, labels, they've all started shifting things around. Projects dropped, tours quietly canceled, brands cutting ties without statements, no apologies, just absence. No one's waiting to see if he survives this. They're building the future without him in it. This isn't a man losing power. This is a system replacing him. And the ones making those decisions, they're not panicked. They're organized. They know what's in play. They know who else is holding copies. They know which names will be impossible to protect if one more tape slips. And from the way they're moving, they've already decided he's no longer useful. The silence that used to shield him now works against him. No one's answering. No one's stepping in. The machine hasn't stopped running. It's just turned without him. And from where I'm sitting, that was always the plan. After a while, the silence started to feel staged. Like everyone had rehearsed their exits and timed them down to the second. Diddy wasn't fighting back, and the ones who used to stand in front of him were already gone. Not one of them tried to slow it down. No PR campaign. No leaks to distract. Just a smooth pullout from people who always knew how to read the temperature early. The tape wasn't the trigger. It was the excuse. The real decision had already been made long before it landed in my hands. I started looking past the names we all knew and focused on the ones who never showed up in photos, but always sat close enough to the money. There's always a second layer. Quiet, precise above the noise. The names behind distribution. The ones who approve the festival budgets, control performance licenses, syndicate back catalog deals. The people who don't trend because they don't need to. Those are the ones who win when a man like Diddy falls. The system he built wasn't just to protect himself. It was protecting a lot of others. Celebrities were the distraction. But it was the lawyers, funders, and board members who needed him to hold the center. The vault wasn't just his leverage. It was their insurance policy. If that collapsed, they'd need to distance fast and rebuild through someone else. I saw deals being made under new names. Former assistants now turned producers. Unknown entities suddenly bankrolling independent artists. Studios shifting old properties into new shell companies. It didn't look like fallout. It looked like rollout. These weren't moves made in reaction to scandal. They were made in preparation for replacement. And Diddy, he was isolated long before the media caught on. Even inside, word was he barely spoke. He wasn't angry. He was confused. You could see it in his pacing. That slow, repeating walk of someone trying to trace back where he lost the handle. But he never had it. Not the way he thought. He'd spent years believing the secrets he collected made him untouchable. That as long as he had footage, recordings, private knowledge of other people's darkness, he'd stay useful. That tape only worked when people believed he still had control of the room. But the moment they sensed he wasn't calling the shots anymore, they pulled the plug without hesitation. That was the part he didn't understand. Power doesn't stay with the one who screams the loudest or has the most dirt. It stays with the one who knows how to turn silence into structure. And once the others sensed that someone else could maintain that system, maybe even improve it, they let him fall without a second thought. I noticed a pattern. The places he once frequented stopped mentioning him. One label that built its whole image off his sign scrubbed the website. No statement. Just missing. One of the heads of an old distribution partner signed over rights to an overseas firm 2 days after the arrest. That same firm had filed for an activity a year ago. Now suddenly reactivated and flush with capital. This wasn't random. There was a chain being reset behind the scenes. Whatever influence he once held was now eroded. His collapse wasn't a casualty. It was a move. Neat, bloodless, efficient. The message was clear. This wasn't about punishing him. It was about replacing him. And from the way things moved, that replacement had already been in position for months. Everyone who used to owe him favors now answers to someone else. And the people he once kept in check, they've been reassigned. Their silence bought again, not with fear, but with new deals, fresh contracts, cleaner paperwork. Diddy didn't lose control. He was managed out. And now the system continues without him. I watched it happen in real time. How fast someone can go from fear to forgotten. No riot, no fight, just silence where his voice used to be. That's how this world works. People disappear before the headlines even hit. And when the smoke clears, the ones left standing pretend they never heard a sound. Diddy built an empire on intimidation and information. But none of that could stop what came for him, because it didn't come from the outside. It came from inside the same house he thought he controlled, the same house he helped build. And the second the people around him realized he was more liability than leverage, they didn't hesitate. This wasn't justice. It wasn't morality. It was logistics. Nobody in power wants the truth. They just want control. And when one man threatens that balance, they trade him out like old wiring. The rest of the system keeps humming. You think someone like Diddy gets taken down without permission? No. Someone opened the door for this. Someone decided his time was up and handed the story to the right hands at the right hour with just enough gaps to make it look like exposure. But exposure is messy. This was clean. He wasn't destroyed. He was archived. And what's worse is he knows it. Every second inside, he's replaying the names of people who stood in his office and swore loyalty. People he had dirt on. People who should have burned when he did. But they didn't. They were spared. Which means someone else pulled them out of the fire. Whatever secrets Diddy thought made him safe, they don't hold weight anymore. Because whoever's holding the vault now isn't using it to scare people. They're using it to build something else. The fear has shifted hands. And if you're still watching this, if you're hearing this story and thinking it's just one man's downfall, you're missing the point. This wasn't just about him. This was a quiet message from those who truly run things. No one is untouchable. Not even the ones who thought they held the leash. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to speak on this. But I know the silence is getting tighter, the same way it did around him. So I'll ask one thing. Before this gets buried too, tell me what you think this really was. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Be honest. You might see things others don't. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribers to be the first to be notified when we upload new leaked secrets you won't see on the news.